What are the psychosocial risk factors? The two key, I've just decided to focus on the two key, which are poor social context, number one, and poor work design. In the social context, we looking at even the background of the employee. If his background is filled with conflict and difficult social standing, it exposes him to psychosocial risks. Aggressive work culture, we'll talk more about that. Unfair work practices, again, we'll discuss that as we go in detail. Poor involvement of employees and over supervision. Especially if you are unfortunate to have a manager whose life revolves around work, that person will be a problem. Over supervision is almost always there. In some organizations I've worked with, I've said some supervisors must just go back to being office people because they want to be involved in almost everything. And that is a psychosocial risk factor. Then moonlighting, when you look at the environment these days, really, money is not enough. So what do? You end up having 2-3 jobs. And that is a strain on your psychological health. The poor work design, duration of many work hours, the nature of the shifts, the workload, the workstation design on its own. But more importantly, non-defined operational policies and procedures. Because if those things are not defined, anything goes, and there will be a lot of confusion, exposing one to psychosocial risk. A bit of detail. When you look at job content as a psychosocial risk, number one, we want to be looking at it having lack of variety. You see, monotonous things have a toll on the psychosocial health of the worker. Meaningless work, underuse of skills, and high uncertainty. Look at COVID. Most of the employees were not sure whether they were going to be employed in the next 3 months. That high uncertainty is an issue. Workload, especially when we focus on the work pace, we want to look at the high levels of time pressure and being continually subjected to deadlines. Tomorrow, I want you to have done this. In the next 3 hours, I want you to have done this. That pace and overload exposes one to psychosocial harm. The work schedule, shift working, night shifts, I think that has been spoken about. Again, inflexible work schedules and unpredictable hours. 3 weeks ago, I was doing something similar to certain organization. And one guy said, Mr. Rusere, you have nailed it when I talked of night shifts. Says, I'm a bachelor, yet I'm married. I said, why? I go for the night shift. When I come back home, my wife is also going out to work in the morning. We hardly have time for ourselves. I'm alone during the day, she's alone during the night. So there's need now for us to then look at that and say, if someone is married, let's not focus on him and the company he's working for only. Let's focus and let's look at him in total. being a married person, let's find out the nature, how they are relating at home, the nature of the wives, if the wife is working, so that we really work around and make sure we then don't have people divorcing because of our work schedule. Aspect of control, the low participation in decision making, lack of control over the workload, the pacing in shift work. My experience there is, as managers, as supervisors, I tell you one thing, the guys on the shop floor, no, they know that. Just give them the opportunity. They'll actually tell you, no, Dara, let us, if we do it this way, and if we do it this way, we will still get what we want. But if you are not then going to involve them in the decision-making problem, it becomes a social hazard. We might have all that, but if you are not clear of your role in the organization, that's one of the most pressing issues. There must be role clarity, because if there's no role clarity, there's going to be role conflict. And again, especially these days, for the young people like teach, what they want is to develop in their careers. But unfortunately, in the industry, there are some people who have been there for the last 30 years or so, and they will tell you, no, that tree grew, it was a seed, and I was here. So if people feel that there is career stagnation, it becomes a hazard to them. There are incidences where someone is over-promoted because maybe he's a relative of the MD. All those, again, are psychosocial hazards, and they also give rise to psychosocial risks. Interpersonal, there are interpersonal issues, and to me, these are the key. How do we relate at work? It is important for us to realize that at work, it's not about friendship. At work, it's about effective working relationships, number one. Number two, as managers, as supervisors, it is also important for you to realize that you are dealing with people, not machines. Before you even say good morning, before you even, you're asking about the report, yesterday's report. If you finish the report, what about that? Look, we are dealing with people who are human, who have veins, who have emotions. And it's important when you manage those aspects. Experience have shown us that what you do is you then get the confidence of the employee. And as the employee is working, he's doing it for you because he appreciates you look at that person first as a human being and then as an employee. Again, issues to do with harassment, issues to do with bullying, issues to do with conflict with superiors, conflict with co-workers, and conflict with those you lead. All those are interpersonal. And that is what brings out the culture of the organization. And that culture, that climate, organizational climate, is a key psychosocial risk factor. And if it is managed well, you will see, well, people will actually say, no, the remuneration is not good, but it's a good organization to work for. What are they referring to? Referring to interpersonal, referring to the climate of the organization. Obviously, home-work interface, work-life balance, again, is a risk factor. Environmental equipment. It's one thing to have equipment, but is the equipment adequate? If it's not adequate, that's a risk factor. poor lighting, excessive noise, lack of space, all those are environmental and equipment factors. Then the culture. One thing I'll just mention on the culture is the poor communication. How is the communication as a manager? How is your communication culture? Are you known as one who always communicates good news? Are you always communicating bad news? And are you communicating timelessly? Are you using the right mode of communication? Because all of that will have a bearing on the climate of the organization. That table there actually links then the risks, right, to the individual characteristics. And then if these are not managed, we then have the symptoms of occupational ill health. And finally, again, if we don't manage this, we then have those diseases. So why we are talking about this is, at the end of the day, we want to have a healthy employee. That's what we want. We want to do away with diseases. We want to do away with these emotional conditions.